If you want to sound better and more professional when playing chords, you have to know about inversions. I don't care what kind of music you're interested in, from Bach to Brooks to Brubeck to Bieber, knowing and being able to play inversions will help you level up your playing and understanding of how music is constructed. And today I'm going to show you the best way to begin mastering inversions, including a free exercise PDF and how to recognize them quickly. First, we need to understand what inversions are. Inversions are chords with rearranged notes. So instead of having a C down here, we might put that C on top. The notes aren't different, they're just rearranged. When we first make a chord, it's in root position when the note name of the chord has that note on the bottom. But if we take the root of the chord and move it to the top, we move to first inversion where the third of the chord is on the bottom. And if we take the third of the chord to the top, now we're in second inversion. Now, if you're playing a triad, meaning a 3-note chord, this is it for inversions because moving the fifth of the chord to the top will bring you back to root position. However, if you're playing a 7th chord with 4 notes, then you do have one more inversion by taking the 5th of the chord and moving it to the top. Now the 7th of the chord is on the bottom and you're in 3rd inversion. By the way, this is part 4 of 6 of a chord series, The Ultimate Roadmap to Piano Chords. Now that we know what inversions are, we need to know what they look like either in chord symbol notation or what they look like when they're written out on the page, as well as what they feel like on the piano and how to best play them. So let's start with chord symbols. We've already learned how to tell the difference between a major and minor, diminished and augmented chord, as well as chord symbols for the 5 different types of 7th chords. Now, when a chord is inverted, we usually use slash notation. In some classical settings, we might use Roman numerals and figured bass instead, but that will have to wait for another video if it's something you decide you're interested in. In slash notation, the name of the chord is going to come first, and then the note that's on the bottom of the chord will be written after the slash. We use slash notation for 7th chords as well. Here's the C7, aka dominant 7th chord, in all positions. If you plan on reading the chords written out on the grand staff, begin learning the shapes on the page of each inversion. Doing this will increase the speed at which you're able to read those chords. For example, a root position chord is one of the most recognizable shapes because it looks like a snowman. 2 note heads are piled on top of the root note, equally distanced, or 3 are stacked if you're talking about 7th chords. However, in a first inversion triad, the distances change and it makes it look totally different. From the bottom note to the middle is an interval of a 3rd, but in a second inversion triad, it's a 4th. You can apply this to 7th chords as well. Each chord has a recognizable shape on the page, and you can train yourself to recognize these differences and instantly know what inversion you have to play. It's the same idea when we talk about shapes on the piano keys. For example, a root position triad requires a very specific hand shape, and our body memorizes what that shape feels like when we go to play it. A first inversion triad requires a different shape than a root position. So I always say that your hand is like a cookie cutter. So even away from the piano, I can form a first inversion shape, go to the piano, and then confidently play that first inversion chord without even looking at the keys because I have my cookie cutter shape. So how do we begin to memorize these shapes? Well, the bad news is that there's no hack or shortcut. The good news is that anyone can memorize these shapes through consistent, efficient, and accurate practice. If playing inversions is brand new to you, focus on major and minor triads first, leaving out the 7ths entirely. Also, don't feel like you have to practice every single exercise in the PDF that I'm about to give you to play chords well. Take one or even one chunk of an exercise and focus on that for 5 minutes a day or a little more before moving on to the next chunk. Make sure that you have mastery over that first chunk that you're doing. So that might take a couple days, it might take a couple weeks, maybe even a month. You want to feel like you can play that first chunk or that first exercise with success before you add on. From here, it's just going to get easier because you've already mastered that one little part. So the next chunk that you take might only take you half the time, and then the next chunk you take will take you even less time. Lastly, before we go through some of these exercises, everything on the PDF is going to be interchangeable. So if you see a major chord exercise, you can play that minor, augmented, or diminished instead. If you see a dominant 7th chord exercise, try any of the 5 7th chords that we've learned. I can't write out all the different combinations of every single chord because that would be like a 25 or more page document. So first you see a fingering reference for all chords and inversions. There are certain cases where you might not want to stick with these fingerings, but this is the foundational fingering that you should learn so you have something that you always tend towards. So first, we are taking a chromatic scale and building major chords in a root position, first inversion, second, and then ending at root position on the top. So I'm first going to start on the C chord. Okay, and then because I'm going chromatic, I'm going to return back down, but go up a half step and do that exact same pattern on D flat. Okay, the next exercise is the chromatic scale with all the inversions again, but just the 7th version. After that, you go back down, up a half step, and do the same thing on D flat major 7. And you can keep going as far as you want up by half step. Before you do even these level 1 exercises, make sure that you can play the reference chart chords and you have an understanding of what you're doing as far as fingering and all that goes. Then level 2 is taking these chords but only playing them blocked. So basically you're having to move from inversion to inversion faster than the level 1. I'm going to start on a C chord, play all the inversions up and down, and then move to a D major chord, up and down, E major, and so on. 2, 3, 4, move to D. First inversion, second, first, back to root. Then up to the next white key, E major. And of course, like I said, everything is interchangeable. So instead of playing major chords, you could do minor. And you notice that I'm just showing you with the right hand, even though it looks like these are exercises are written hands together. Practice first hands separately, and then feel free to add hands together. Also, just for ease of reading in the bass clef, I wrote the hands 2 octaves apart so that when the left hand went up, you wouldn't have 5 billion ledger lines on the staff. This is just a very flexible exercise, so you could practice as written, or you could bring the left hand up so they're only 1 octave apart. These are on white keys. Then once you can play that, do these on black keys as well. So start on D flat and play major chord inversions. Then move up to the next black key, so E flat. Okay, and then the next black key, and so on. The next exercise I call Blue Danube Around the World. We probably all know this tune. I think it was in Fantasia. So what we're doing is just a kind of a fun way to progress through chords. The written note is high C, but I have an 8 VA. Start here, the second to highest C on the piano. And this is because we're eventually going to work our way all the way down. So I'm starting in C position, then C major chord, and I go down to C major in second inversion. And you'll notice that my lowest note in this chord is a G. So that's my pivot note, and that's going to become my new position. So I was here, now I'm taking the lowest note and moving to G position, and I'm going to do that same pattern on G. So G chord, move down to G second inversion. This is my pivot note on the bottom, so now I'm going to play a D major chord. Move down to second inversion. Pivot note, A major chord. Second inversion. Pivot note, E. Pivot note, B. Second. Pivot note, F sharp. And so on. So you end up all the way down here and you've worked your way through all the keys. I've written it for right hand, but of course, feel free to do it with your left hand. Then for level 3, I have first inversion scales, second inversion scales, and then for the 7th chords, third inversion scales. So basically, the top note is always going to make a C major scale. And then back down. For the first inversion scale, I'm always going to play a first inversion chord that's major. Top note C, and it's a C major first inversion chord. Now the next note in the scale is D, and I need to make a first inversion major chord, so I'm here. E major first inversion, F major, G, A, B, and C, and then I go back down. And then left hand is the same, just remember to use the 5-3-1 first inversion fingering. Then the second inversion scale, I just wrote it out in minor, top note C again, but now I need a second inversion minor, so it would be A minor. Okay, move up to the D for the scale, so I need B minor. Now C sharp minor, D minor, E minor, and so on. Now third inversion scales, I just use the example of the dominant 7th. Here's my top C for the scale. Now I want a dominant 7th inversion, and it's an F dominant 7 in third inversion. So this is level 3 because music theory wise, it's complicated and you're moving fast through inversions, but it is a fun exercise if you're at this level. Having a good understanding of major and minor keys and their key signatures will help you understand chord building on a new level. So if that's on your piano to-do list, head over to my 12-week major or minor key challenge over here. Every lesson goes over the key and the fingering of the major or minor scale, arpeggios, and other exercises and free pieces in that key. It's a great way to begin learning these necessary piano skills, all for free. Before you head over there though, make sure to like this video, and I'll see you soon.